doing?
When making holds, you realistically want to think about the angle of your home wall and the level that you climb at. Obviously thinking of improvement, not just at your current level. But there's no point in making absolute dog shit holds that you're never going to be able to pull onto.
For example?
For example, this one here is pretty pointless on a 50-degree board because I think I've used it maybe once or twice.
Whereas a very important hold is this one.
No, a very important hold is like ones to warm up on, like jugs and big fat pinchers. I do love a big fat pinch.
Fat shaming?
That's not fat shaming, that's fat loving. Because I just said how much I love a fat pinch. I also think there's too much emphasis on the holds being the best possible hold ever. Like, I've got 2 holds here by the Bow Wow holds, and they are fucking sick. Yes, 100%. They are absolutely amazing. You've got these 2 holds of Jim Bow Wow's. I think that's his name.
Bow Wow!
Well, yeah, you got.
Who's that? Snoop Dogg.
What? Snoop Dogg's Bow Wow?
If you don't know, you do now. Bow Wow. There it is.
I don't know.
Anyway,
these are very fucking sexy and they're awesome to look at, but I don't think you need every hold on your board to be that good.
Yeah.
For instance.
They could be shit, like this one.
Yeah, like this one. This is just a bit of pine 2x1 that I have just tapered off there, sanded it down. Haven't even sanded the edges down, but it's usable. You can train on it.
Perfect.
Or these, like, these are 2x4s, treated wood. They're absolutely disgusting. It's probably the worst bit of wood you could think of putting on a board. But then I had a wide pinch problem. You can't ever move. And they're fucking banging for it. I mean, you can't move them. Well, I could take them out, but if you drill the screws back in, they're going to be fucked. But the point is, you don't have to have the perfect hold for every hold on your board. You can just make some choss. As long as you're actually able to use it, and you're doing something productive with it, it has some value. Some other things, I think, like making some 3D space. Again, this is absolute choss. I've just taken a bit of ply and 3 bits of ply and stacked it up so that some holds are further out from the wall. And then like here as well, I got 1 hold or 2 holds. You can have it as a thumb, thinking about multiple uses of holds. Absolute choss. That's a bit of 1x1, is it? Or 2x2? That's 4x2, not 2x4. No, 2x1. Yeah. Anyway, you get me. You can just use. Don't have to have hardwood, immaculate holds to make your board actually useful. And we're going to show you how to make not just some chossy holds, but some decent-ish holds. Like these are probably best attempt at making a Bow Wow hold, and as you can see, it's nowhere near as good as that. Like, look, it's like fucking polished. It's lovely. You can't even. There's no texture on that bit, but there is on that bit. Whereas I didn't even think about it, but you actually kind of want some texture on the edge that you're holding. You don't want no texture. So these are a bit rough there. But,
yeah.
But yeah. So I think that is everything on your board. You also want a big range of holds. You don't just want crimps or pinchers or undercuts. You want everything. So I'm gonna show you some tips and tricks on how to make better holds. First things first, protection. Don't be silly. We've got some selection of nice.
As you can see, this workshop is in a serious order.
Yes, that indeed. We've got some bits of wood. This is mainly tulip and, well, it's all tulip and walnuts. Going to make a pinch and a crimp, I reckon. First thing, you want to find some wood that actually suits it. Obviously you're not going to make a crimp out of this, you're going to make a nice juicy pinch. You can work with it like you see here. I've got all of this wood from a furniture company. They've left some interesting shapes that you can work with. Then you want to cut it down to the size you want. And voila. I've got a nice block. We want to shape it a bit. I tend to use a rasp to start with before going on to the old belt sander. Many ways you can shape it there. You can use a chisel if you wish, or whatever you see fit, but this is just my way. But what I'm looking to do is to add something to hold basically, and also make it a bit more comfy, because you don't want big edges like this, because that's not going to be, well, clean cut edges. You want nice round shapes basically. I'm just going to get rid of them. You don't have to do this, you can just sling it straight on the belt sander if you can't be arsed, but it's useful to get an idea of the shape that you want to make from it. You can see we've got a very simple pinch shape, whereas we're trying to get rid of the ability to use these, but I'm going to just go onto the belt sander because it's going to be a lot easier to do that. Less hard work.
Yeah.
This is probably the most Yankee belt sander setup known to man. I feel like I can probably claim that. Anyone's got a more janky one, let me know. Make sure you got the right belt sander, because basically you want like a 60 grit or 80 grit to shape it, and then you want like something 120 to smoothen this up a bit. As you can see, got like a bit more of a nice curve to it, so you shouldn't be able to actually hold that, whereas obviously that's more of an edge that you can hold. Just remembering that curves are way harder to hold that way than just a flat edge or in cuts. I find that when you're actually using the belt sander, like starting from the flat position and going around gets you a nice curve. I've got the main shape of it now. Pinch. Shouldn't really be able to hold on to the top or bottom of it easily. So I've changed from the 60 grit to 120 to actually just smoothen off the edges. As you see, there's just still some sharp edges now where I've taken it off this way. It's left sharp edges here and here all along. So switch it up, smoothing it down. So shouldn't have as many edges now. The idea with that is you want to be a bit lighter and constantly checking and looking and like assessing what needs to be done. Whereas when you've got the 60 grit and you're just shaping it, you can just be a bit more forceful. Yeah. So that's done for now for a pinch. I will then go on to the next stage. Shaped up a little crimp. Cut it up, shaped it a bit. Crimps are probably the easiest to make because there's the least amount of wood. So you can just bash them out real quick. Whereas with a pinch you've got to get rid of more wood. So it takes longer. However, they're obviously smaller, so they're a bit more delicate, and you have to get your fingers closer to the belt sander, so you need to be a bit careful. I find that you can either be methodical with the angle of the crimp, or you can just play it by ear, depending on your board. Obviously, if you've got a steep board, you want a wider crimp with more in-cut so you can peel behind it more. Whereas if you've got a smaller board, well, a less steep board, you can have it a bit flatter. Or if you just want some flat edges, make them flatter. However, I've gone for, you can see, a bit of a, probably like 20 degrees. You don't want it too steep because then it's just not comfortable at all. The idea is to make these holds just as comfortable as you can, so they're actually enjoyable to climb on. However, you can't make a bad hold because outdoors there is no such thing as the perfect. Well, there's such thing as a perfect hold, but on your boulder there could be any kind of shot. Imagine. Got to train for everything. Anyway, so shaping the crimp. So one thing I find tends to happen with crimps is they can just turn into like mini pinches. You're trying to mitigate, you got to imagine it's on the wall and like your thumb, like will it actually be able to use it? And the answer hopefully is no for a good crimp, because a lot of holds on the board just turn out to be, they're actually pinches. But yeah, so to try and do that, I just basically try and round it off as much as possible. Obviously you're going to get people that can use them as pinchers, and when you're climbing on a board you can remember that you can set your own rules. You can allow yourself not to use it as a pinch if you feel like it's better for the climb you're trying it. I also find, as you can see, I've made it a bit wonky. This is just an error from my part, being like not paying enough attention, but the way you can avoid that is just like marking it. So when you've got your square bit of wood, if you just like mark lines, so like you're like, oh, here's where the edge is going to be, so like there, and then this is where I want to sand up to, and then it will more likely give you a more uniform edge, is the idea. Okay, we go. 3 different levels of crimp. You've got that's straight off the belt sander, that's with a little bit of sanding, and then this is with like half an hour's sanding. But yeah, this is my best attempt at the bow wow hold, but obviously you don't have to go to that extreme in terms of when you're actually just making casual holds for your board. You can if you want to, of course, but it just requires quite a lot of time, sanding, and just caution, whereas you can get to that pretty easily with just a bit of sandpaper. My friend Carl taught me. Make a little square of sandpaper, put it in your palm of your hand, and just basically wash the wood as if you had a sponge in your hand. And this helps get rid of all the lumps. You can see, you see all these, I don't know if you can see them, there's all these little lumps. You're wanting to get rid of those. Another way you can do this is with sanding blocks / sponges. These are actually pretty shit for it, but because they're too dense, as you can see, but they work a bit for the first bit. But one thing, remember not to sand this edge too much, because you want some texture on there. You can always sand it down a bit and then sand it down with a harder grip if you feel like that's something. As you can see, from very little effort, it's already got way less rough, a bit more smooth. And if you're wanting to take it that extra bit further, all you're basically doing is this over and over and over, and then you take a slightly finer bit of sandpaper. So this is a 120 grit sandpaper, then you can move on to like a 240 bit. And then you go to that. There you go, 400, 600, and just keeping an eye on. One thing I find is you can get some white scratches, and that's basically where if you can maybe see it there, you haven't done it well enough with the previous bit of paper. So then just go back, and then sometimes you don't notice until you go forwards to the next bit again. There's there, but you just go backwards and then going up and then back down and up and back down and then up until it looks nicer, basically. That's the idea. Make it look nice and sexy. Again with the pinch. When you got something this big, you don't really need to be using a tiny bit of sandpaper, but you can. Use a bit bigger. But the crumbs is still there. You're just going from lower grit to higher grit sand. And that's pretty much everything, I think. Again, the key points, just making holds that work for you and your board and your style. Keeping a mix of variety of holds, I think, is always useful. Not just sticking to, say you love crimps, just putting crimps on your board. Just drill some holes, make sure you got at least 2 holes in every hold, obviously, otherwise it spins.
Obviously.
Be gentle with it, and then you countersink. I think that stuff is pretty self-explanatory. I've, in the past, when I first was making holds on my board with my shit bits of wood, I wasn't even putting holes in, I was just drilling straight into the board. And obviously half the time it splits, half the time it doesn't. But when you're actually putting a lot of effort into making a hold, you wanna be using a drill and not be a fucking idiot like me. Again, make sure that the drill bit's the right size for the screws you're using. I think this is a 5.5. I'm using 5 screw, whatever that is in screw, but a 5, not a 5.5 screw, obviously, if you don't want the screw to be touching the wood.
Exactly.
But yeah, et voila!